Attention. Welcome to the Different Spectrums podcast. We dive into the wild world of mental health discussions. Get ready for profound talks, a sprinkle of humor and sarcasm, and a touch of colorful language. Just a quick heads up, our show reflects our individual opinions, which may not align with the standpoint of the podcast, our featured guests, or any related corporate entities. Our mission? To illuminate through laughter and satire because everyone needs a good chuckle. Chill out and don't stress over the small stuff. Legal troubles? No, thank you. Cancel culture? Please spare us. We'd rather keep this space lawsuit free. So buckle up, have a good time, and join us as we navigate the vibrant realm of mental health on the Different Spectrums podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. By using our link, you can get 10% off your first month of therapy. So, Naz, as a therapist on BetterHelp, what has your experience been like?
I've been doing it since January of 2021, and it's been really fun and exciting. I've been able to reach clients all over the United States and the world. I've had good relationships. I've had folks that I've had for a couple months and a good handful where I've had for almost 2 years now. So it's magnificent. I've enjoyed my time and my clients. I love them.
Awesome. You can do it all from your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, or messaging, however you feel the most comfortable. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/DSP or choose Different Spectrums podcast during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
Hey everyone, this is a different edition of the podcast. We shot this actually podcast a while ago with a magnificent guest, and it turns out that I didn't have my audio correct, and all my audio was cut out. So today you're getting ready to hear a back and forth between Spencer and our guest. I said a lot of crazy commentary, kind of funny things to kind of throw Mac off, but we wanted you to hear them, their voice. We got some magnificent scenes that are actually on here, so please go check those out on wherever you get your podcast. Hopefully they'll get approved on YouTube. We'll see. Sometimes Amazon Prime stuff doesn't always work, but we're checking out the show Gen V. And so trigger warning for this as I bring up in some of the podcasts, because we're all talking about all types of eating disorders. So big time trigger warning for anyone going through that or that suffered through that. I know a lot of folks that are neurodivergent, autistic, have a lot of eating disordered or disordered eating like issues. So we're talking about it one more time. We got Dr. Mac, which is magnificent, weird, funny. We're going to talk about their tattoos, their history, all the goodies. We're going to talk about authenticity in the workplace and showing up being that authentic self. So can't wait for y'all to experience them. We had to pump up the podcast. I was not going to let my idiocy, not making sure everything was recorded, hold them back from being promoted. So definitely go check them out. They're awesome. Have a blast today with us. And then remember, the scenes are always good representations and visuals on how others may feel. So be on the lookout for all the goodies coming out this week. All right, folks. Good luck listening. Peace. I'm going to kick it to Spencer now for the actual intro.
I'm Spencer, and of course, that's our licensed clinical therapist, Nas. Remember, don't take us too seriously. Also, don't forget to run up those likes for us. We'd really appreciate it. Yeah, there it is. All right. So before we get into the show today, we have a special guest. She is a licensed psychologist and consultant who has her own practice called Reveal Psychological Services. There it is. Tongue twister there. She's also an advocate for a variety of communities, including the LGBTQIA plus community and nerds everywhere. Yes. Please welcome Dr. McKenna Hereford.
That's such a great intro. Oh my
Hey,
God.
I'm doing my best. Literally just wrote it. It's fine. Uh, Welcome on. Thank you for being here. We
I'm
really
excited.
appreciate it. So today we are going to be doing Gen V. Gen V. When this first came out, we actually wanted to do this because they did such a amazing job of not only talking about what it's like to be a college slash superstar, kid. It's also just about all these different disorders that they're kind of going through and things like that. So they've did a great job, and can't wait for, was it season is it 4 or 3 that's coming out for the boys? Yeah. Yeah, for the boys. Can't wait for that. And then it's going to transition over there. So, some topics that we're going to be talking about are going to be eating disorders, self-harm, also some trans issues, and then also manipulators. They come in all different forms. Yes, Lee. Before I kick it to Naz, we just want to also say rest in peace to Chance Perdomo, who passed away suddenly from a motorcycle accident. Um, Very sad. He had such a promising career. I didn't really look into like just his, personal life and what he was also doing outside of there, but looked like he was going to be doing a lot of great things. So just want to say rest in peace. Whoop whoop. Anyways, hey everybody, we back again. You have no idea. Whoop. Say
Whoop whoop.
there you go.
There it
There
is.
it is. There it is.
Want to get some Burger? I could kill for mocha noir.
Oh, I am not hungry. Okay. We could do a scene from Pocket Romance, Little Hero. Oh, wait. Smallest Heart's good.
Those are all termites movies. Oh, fuck that guy. I went to these huge parties he'd throw with Bryan Singer in the Hollywood Hills. It was gross. I think he just OD'd.
Oh, well, but these are the only ones with a regular person and a tiny person.
Wait, Jesus, Emma. Did you think I picked you because you get tiny? No, I picked you because you're great. Because I wanted to learn from you.
Yeah, what do you have to learn from me?
You're funny, likable. Your branding is on point. 1 million followers. My YouTube channel can barely crack like 10K. Look, I used to get typecast all the time. I was the sexy teen who fucks the dad and tries to kill the mom in 4 different VTV movies.
Well, I thought you were really good in Teacher's Pet.
Thanks. Point is, no way I'm typecasting you. I mean, unless you like getting small.
I mean, I hate it. It hurts. I mean, I'm losing the enamel in the back of my teeth.
Wait, what do you mean?
Sorry, I'm nothing. I'm just lying.
Okay. I mean, that was obviously something, but I don't want to pry.
I purge.
Purge?
To get small.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I get a little smaller each time. It takes a while. It's not fun. It's gross. Like, I kind of hate myself for it.
oh, fuck that. You're not getting small for this scene. Who do you want to play? Anyone.
Queen Maeve.
Then you're playing Queen Maeve. Hey y'all, it's Justine Garcia, and it's time to spill some tea. It's the first week of class.
Can I see the phone?
And what's become super
Hey,
clear is that
if
this
it's
place
true,
is just
you should really get some help.
Can I please see the phone?
Star of Fun Size with Little Cricket has to throw up to get tiny. Just another example of how the patriarchy makes women chase unattainable beauty standards. And I, for one, am fucking sick of this heterosexist male gaze. Emma?
Out here. Food.
So, every time you eat to get big and to get small, you.
Yeah. Listen, I'm really tired. I've been fighting off ants all night, so.
Oh, okay. Good night. No, you know, that's just a tiny bit fucked, isn't it?
Okay, I've been through this Lifetime movie before, so I'll just play the trailer.
No, it's not an eating disorder. It's how I get small. Yes, my mom knows. Yes, I'm in control.
You're in control?
I'm fine.
You were so tiny you could barely move. What if I hadn't come home in time?
Marie, it's not a big deal.
Look, maybe you should take a break. Talk to someone, get help.
Okay, and you cut yourself. Are you gonna take a break? Get help?
That's different. That's my power.
Thank you. Really. But I've been pitied by half the school today. So if you don't mind.
I'm not pitying you.
Okay, Marie, we don't have to do this.
We could just focus on classes like you said. We can just be
Roommates, okay? Fine.
Okay.
Whatever.
Sorry, this one's head is in the clouds 24/7. Emma, this is Courtney Fortney.
Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you.
She is a senior producer at VOD. She ran Super in America, Citizen Starlight. Last night's interview with your roommate, Marie.
Oh, Marie's your roommate? Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, real bottled lightning there, huh?
Yeah, she's great.
Anyway, Courtney and I have been DMing the last couple days, and she wants to talk to you about maybe starring in her next reality TV show.
Sorry, wait, really?
Little cricket. Fun. Wholesome. Sunshine. But no one knew about the tragic underbelly.
Sorry, tragic underbelly.
It's a rebrand.
Oh, it's a complete and total rebrand, right? So Little Cricket's dead, R.I.P. Now it's Meet Emma. Teen making her way at God You. Only now, she's battling her own sort of internal supervillains, from the body image stuff, the eating disorder.
The eating disorder.
Yes. And, society's cruel notion of female perfection, right?
Yeah, isn't that stuff all a little personal?
No, that's the point. It's the point, because we're pulling it all out of the shadows. And if I'm being honest with you, I'm a little sick of Vought's glossy bullshit. I want fucking emotion. I want real pain. Okay? Right now we're working with eaten alive or feeling small.
It's a starting off point. We can develop it, honey.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me, I have to use the restroom.
I don't like to.
Like, maybe it doesn't have to be like a cautionary tale or a. I mean, like, why can't it be like inspirational? I mean, not like Queen Maeve, but. I mean, like Queen Maeve, you know?
Baby, you're not like. You gotta work with what you got.
It's kind of. I mean, it's exploiting me.
I think in the real world, everybody uses everyone. And I think that this could help you in a million ways.
You know, she taught me how to do it. How to stick my fingers down my throat. Until I vomited bile. Go fuck yourself.
Holy shit. This is fan-fucking-tastic. Oh, you're gonna need a whole nother room for all the people's choices.
FYI, Dr. Cohn says we gotta meet you halfway.
Paul, not here.
Point is, we're trying.
I'm not a boy, Dad. Not all the time. And I'm sorry that you hate that.
But you are. You're my firstborn son. The day you were born was the best day of my life. I thought we were giving you a gift with Compound V.
You did give me a gift.
Can we please not talk about this?
For you, maybe. I'm no bigot. I get a lot of kids don't have a choice. But you do. You can be a boy forever if you want. Sometimes I think you change into a girl just to spite me.
Paul, stop.
I'm just the kid addicted to their PlayStation. Goes to Olive Garden just for the breadsticks, who binges Property Brothers. I've never changed, Dad. I've always just been me.
Can't run forever, you know.
They're gonna find you. Only this time, they'll hurt
You know what you have to do.
This is bad, Sam. You said you were gonna save me.
No. I'm gonna save the real Emma, not you. You're not real.
Real like that?
Drop the weapon! Get down on the ground!
I heard you ripped a guy's throat out. Hey, freeze!
I was just a little fool when I heard his name. He's the graveyard legend of the dancing game. Knew my I have a single dad with two daughters. Their names are Haley and...
Oh, Sam. You have to stop hurting people.
Hey everyone, have you been looking for something to help you when you feel extra fidgety? How about when you have a sensory overload? Well, I'm here to introduce you to the Oh No Fidget Roller. It helps me regulate and also feel at ease. The Oh No Roller comes in 5 different materials, including plastic, aluminum, steel, titanium, and silicone. You can use our code DSP10 to get 10% off your order when you visit onoroller.com and get your roll on.
And we're back again. Okay.
There you go. Is there a rating, mature or X for podcasts? Is that something we should
We're
consider?
definitely part of it now. I mean, I must check. What is this parental? Autistic. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a mixed bag there. Oh my God.
Happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride Month. Every day is a good day. Here we go. All right. So before we get into the show, Gen V, like I said, we have a special guest, Dr. Mac. Yes, yes. So, all right. First thing, people on the pod, they're gonna notice you got a tattoo right here on your neck. It's Spider-Man with the spider sense going off, right? Yep, there it is. There's the yep.
There
Look
we
at
go.
that. That's the exact yep, just squished down a little bit. You know what? That's exactly how it would look if you tattooed it too. It's all big on Peter Parker. So I kind of just asked, like, so I know there's more meaning behind than just it's Spider-Man, right? It's more than just being a Spider-Man fan. What else does that mean to you?
I'm glad you asked that because some people assume it is just because I'm a Spider-Man fan. And don't get me wrong, we love all versions of Spider-Man. We love some Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I did also get the tattoo because when I was in my training and we would have essentially group supervision where it's a bunch of trainees, we're all learning together, we're discussing cases in therapy or testing, whatever we're doing. And someone would present a case or I would have a client and I would be missing some pieces, but something was off. And not necessarily negatively, but it just became down that I would say my spidey senses are tingling here, depending on whatever it was. And usually there was some missing piece and we couldn't always quite put our finger on it. And I generally, if I just zoom out, tend to specialize working with people that have complex concerns. So that could mean like combination of medical and mental health, multiple mental health things we don't know what's going on, systemic issues, maybe there are important cultural issues we need to consider, all of that together. And so it just became known as kind of my thing, every setting that I worked at. And it's also a great opener with clients. And I also think it's relevant for therapy because a lot of times we don't trust our judgment. We don't trust our, obviously not true blue spidey senses, so to speak, but similar enough.
Yeah.
Learning discernment, essentially. And so it's nice to kind of incorporate that into therapy, especially with clients, of learning how to trust that. Is this your own baggage? Are we actually picking up on some red flags? Which also is probably related to the show. I know we talked about working with like manipulators, whatever. I love working with clients that have some maybe personality disorder stuff, like narcissistic, antisocial, borderline. I've worked in corrections before. I've worked in hospitals. I love it. They're some of my favorites. Also, further hence the spidey senses.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, like that opener alone, a lot of people just being like, "What is that? Why? Oh my gosh, you're a Spider-Man fan too? I love it's great."
Question, because it's a big step. This is, I mean,
Yeah.
I have sleeve tattoos. You can't cover
Yeah.
this. Like that's a big step. Now we can't really cover this anywhere. The VA was not happy.
Yeah, they're not
Which is
very.
no, which was funny because I said
All the veterans are tatted, I'm assuming.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the group of people that brought tattoos into much more mainstream, and it is a nice like opener. But yes, my throat, it was a big step because yeah, I can't hide that anywhere. And I don't want to. That was the other piece. So honestly, I wanted it to be visible at kind of all times. Figured a face tat would be a little extra, although the VA said, well, one of my supervisors said, well, at least you didn't get a face tat. And I almost did that weekend, just out of spite. But I grew back, regenerated my emotional maturity, and I did not do that. But I thought about it for a while and I wanted it to be visible. I also thought this is purely aesthetic. I think the shape of it really fits the throat versus maybe some other areas on the body. And the throat actually really doesn't hurt that bad, everyone. I got to tell you, it really wasn't that bad. Also, because it only took 45 minutes. There was no sensitized skin that you feel like everything's scratching off. It feels weird. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of, you feel it on the bone, but it really doesn't hurt that bad. And I was in and out in 45 minutes.
So in the course of this scene, I probably interjected some really funny material stating, look at that neck tattoo, So I feel like a lot of folks would love it. And this is what I talked about in that podcast, but also could be distracting, but maybe distracting in a good way. Because there are a lot of neurodivergent folks that, obviously many of us aren't good at eye contact. And so I'm always coaching or teaching folks in certain societal norms is finding a place on the face or the room, right, where you can draw your attention to what's not actually the eyes. So that's, looks more neurotypical. because you will be judged based upon that. And so I was making jokes like, why are you looking at my neck tattoo? You know, why are you looking at my chest? You know, my eyes are up here, Johnny. My eyes are up here, not in my bosoms. You know. Most likely I made a lot of fucking weird jokes about that. But in actuality, I think it could be a really good tool because I'm always advising people to connect to certain things because a lot of folks are going to want that, right? Because if you're not doing the eye contact and all that other BS that they make us do, you know, you're weird, you're awkward, maybe inappropriate, maybe they think you're depressed, maybe they think that you're shy or anxious, and actually, the reality, you might not be. It might be a neurological thing that many of us autistic folks that go through, that the eye contact hurts. For me, it physically hurts after a certain period of time, and also the closer we get. Further away, good. Closer we get, starts to hurt. Longer it lasts, starts to hurt. It sounds real sexual. I'm just talking to myself, Megan. Says Joe. Okay, let's get back to the podcast.
I would actually. I do actually work a lot with autistic clients, therapy-wise, and now doing more assessment. And so we do get creative. And so if we got to look other places, but I didn't think about that. I would be okay with that. People are staring at my neck tattoo. I mean, I clearly got it in a space where I'm welcoming people looking at it. You know, I can't really say anything about that.
Stop looking at my throat tattoo. Like,
I could have gotten anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody. Go get your neck tattoos. They're not so bad. Anyway, so you said you worked at the VA. My mom actually works at the VA currently.
Bless her.
Yes, it's tough work. Can you kind of get a little bit into that? I mean, what was your experience and like what were you kind of and what were your clients like, especially? Were you working with the veterans themselves and kind of going through everything? And what was that experience like?
Yeah. So when I was a baby master's student, I started off in corrections. So any rose color, and it was in Florida, also peak bath salts time. So any rose colored glasses were that was my introduction to the field. And I thought, oh, okay, so this is how we do therapy. Okay. And while I was there, obviously really complicated cases, really high risk cases, so much trauma, and then all kinds of unusual things. Psychosis, I know we're going to touch on that later. That is one of my soapboxes. I love talking about some psychosis because it is more complicated. But the other thing was it overlapped with the VA more than I would have liked it to. There were a lot of veterans. They have veterans court, which is important. And there were a lot of veterans that ended up there, either because they were arrested for more what we call survivor related crimes. So maybe theft or trespassing just to survive, anything beyond that. And so there's a lot of overlap. And so in my doctoral program, I worked in all kinds of other settings. So this sort of, I guess, falls under eating disorders. But when I worked in a children's hospital sickle cell clinic, I did not have the throat tattoo yet, by the way, just throwing it out there. But I worked on the hematology oncology clinic and specifically the sickle cell clinic. And so pica, which is unusual, you don't see it that often where you're eating non-edible foods. So we saw that quite a bit. There's a lot of complexity. I learned a lot there. Also saw how racism pops up there as well in this unique kind of way because opioids are one of the only ways, at least at that time, maybe it's changed, I hope it has. Opioids were one of the main ways to treat like a pain crisis. So taking all that information, then I did a rotation in the VA and it was very complicated. And I like a good challenge. I didn't like being pigeonholed. I get bored really easily. And so yes, worked directly with veterans, did that in my program and then internship and then my postdoctoral program. And then even now, I still work with veterans, sometimes active duty too. And so I spent most of my time in the general mental health clinics. You see a little bit of all of the things, but also did some rotations in their eating disorder clinic on the inpatient unit, or AKA where people go for a grippy sock vacation. Also residential, a lot of different, I've dabbled. So worked a lot with veterans and active duty for sure. And a lot of complexity there, 100%, especially when there are medical issues. And so I guess it sort of overlaps a little bit with Gen V in the sense that there is kind of this organic, like physiological process sort of happening that is intrinsically ingrained in there. For example, some people have a lot of people have GI or stomach issues, and that might go alongside the eating disorder or might exist separately, but they kind of flow into each other a bit. So, yeah, a lot of complexity there. And I've really enjoyed working with the clients. I just could not keep working within that system.
So this part of the podcast, I think I might have asked a question about, what are the most common things, symptoms, issues that you're seeing coming into the vets or coming into your office that are vets. And this is when she goes on a long list of things, but most likely they've come in. Also, remember, we shot this before our vacation. So this was kind of like that Pride-ish month. Then we went on vacation for like 3 weeks, right? And then all the pods were coming out. So we're way behind. Again, love that she's talking. There's a lot of things I didn't think about when it comes to military members and what they could be suffering. This is going to be some really good clips here. Please stay tuned. Stay locked in. Lock it up. Lock it up. I'm done.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of variety. Of course, combat. There are also random accidents that people might have from maybe they're doing their job. Some people during basic training, for example, they might have a horrible accident where they might have to have surgery or something like that. That can be really traumatic. And then also military sexual trauma, trigger warning, is extremely high. And Pride Month, we should talk about. It is very different for Don't Ask, Don't Tell era veterans, where you were not allowed to disclose that. You got kicked out. But the other element kind of behind closed doors is like you were specifically targeted for harassment. That still happens today. Don't get me wrong. And so there's a lot of military sexual trauma that happens and a lot of complicated gender related things, particularly if you're a man and this being perpetrated by another man. The complicated piece in the military too is in some ways you can probably trust a lot of these people with your life, but then they betray you potentially in these other really big ways. And leadership makes or breaks your experience when you're active duty. And there's also a lot of moral injury, which I would guess has actually been a theme in the boys and Gen V. So it overlaps a little bit with PTSD, but essentially it's you've either had to participate in something or witness something that just at your core goes against your values. So if you're active duty and you're forced to participate or watch something happen, maybe it's during combat, not necessarily, but it could be during combat, and maybe it overlaps with PTSD, but you're being forced to witness someone else maybe engage in, and you can't do anything about it. You can't go AWOL. This is one job where I can quit the VA anytime I wanted to. I could quit the VA. No one's going to come arrest me. So there are all these complicated factors with how do I reconcile the fact that maybe someone in leadership or a battle buddy, I trust them with my life, but then they've betrayed me in this other way. Maybe it's like sexual trauma, maybe it's combat related trauma. How do I reconcile those pieces? And also the red tape bureaucracy, a lot of moral injury there. So it manifests a lot of different ways, including, people don't talk about this enough, but psychosis. You can legitimately have hallucinations. It seems like paranoia, but really it's more hypervigilance that's hard to tease apart, where you're more on edge. And so, yeah, people can have PTSD that significantly that you might legitimately have hallucinations. It's probably not going to manifest like it did in the scenes we're going to talk about today in Gen V. That would be highly unusual, but it can happen. There's a lot of stigma and misunderstandings around psychosis. So there's totally overlap there.
I think in this part, we're looking specifically at the question being directed is, do you see the similarities between academia and the military? Specifically when it comes down to the abuse or trauma, the neglect, the pressure that people face, which leads to the PTSD, which leads to the overwhelming thoughts, which leads to wanting to quit, which could lead to suicidality. And a lot of the times the things that happen fall on deaf ears. There's not much change in higher ed academia. There's not much change in high school. There's not much change in the curriculum. The universal design is not there for folks that are battling through issues or disabilities or differing sensory or emotional, or like me with tons of other learning disabilities. It's not built for us. And so she's trying to preach on that, like, hey, there's a lot of fucked up shit going on. And there's a lot of wonderful people in admin. There's also not a lot of people that are wonderful in admin. Okay, continue to listen.
No, because we wanted to get some people on that were in the military to kind of talk about this stuff, but it's kind of hard to do sometimes. It is. But I will also say that, like you said, with the red tape, it's like you have a military court that you go to. It's not like a civilian court, it's military. And so, depending on who's actually in that like tribunal or whatever, it's like if you actually do speak up, then you have to go through that and see if they're like, and they're probably older people that are just like, it's fine, or whatever. So.
And the high up people are so, I'm talking generals, and the high up are so far removed. And sometimes to get to that point, there are questions about the quality because you're moving around so much at that level of leadership that you're disrupting your family. And you've probably already been doing that a lot. And so the question is, who are they promoting at that point? Who are the people applying as opposed to getting, and there are a lot of great people in leadership, don't get me wrong, but I think that's the point, is that it's so heavily, there's red tape anyway, and there's that hierarchy in place, but your leadership can make or break you. And I'm going to say a controversial statement. My partner is active duty. I have friends that are all of it. And I did 11 years of school. Academia, which also like Gen V really tackles a lot more than the boys does. Academia and the military are not that dissimilar from each other in a lot of ways, if we're being honest here. And that comes up in Gen V, the structures in place.
This is most likely the point when Spencer's talking about her posts and she comes with very spicy, kind of assertive, aggressive, feels really good, feels like she can kick your ass. Feel like, she can kick my ass any day she wants. If I'm being honest, But that's where we're kind of teasing her about that and probably making a lot of funny different innuendos in there. And specifically just their aura, their presence, and how a lot of people are probably going to think that's magnificent. And it's magnificent to see someone like with some swag, right? And not just the typical like therapist that we see that's just a pretty little white girl. This white girl got some spice. It's got some authenticity to it. It's got some aggression to it. It's got some masculinity to it. It's got some gravitas to it. It's weird. The tattoos, the Spider-Man, you're not seeing that. It's not quote unquote the feminism, the femininity that we always see. And so we were trying to put some acknowledgement on that, and then also trying to embrace her and her own neurodivergence and being like, girl, you autistic as hell. I think we may get into that later, but also I might have had to delete that out because it was mostly me talking and teasing. All right, let's get back into the clips.
You're also a big advocate, right, for many different topics, right? What made you want to not only talk about mental health, but then also just be an advocate overall for like a community you're in or other communities as well?
I'm spicy in general. I think when people see my social media, I had some marketing person that, we all get those DMs from some marketing person, and they said, your spicy posts, like those are the ones that get the most traction. I thought, okay, so I'm actually not doing that I've actually toned that down I tone it down. It's much more in person. And so I need somewhere to channel that, because if I'm working in these structures or systems, now I'm in private practice, but I need to feel like I can do something. And so if I'm running into this wall over here at work or whatever, my needs value wise maybe are not being met that way. Okay, well, what can I do over here? And also feel connected to people, and also kind of be inspired. Maybe they're doing it in other creative ways that otherwise I wouldn't be able to see. We all have coworkers in these spaces. I mean, best case scenario, you have coworkers that you can kind of commiserate with in the misery, but then we all kind of get stuck. And so seeing that on social media, and also learning a lot. Like, for example, I didn't go to medical school. Absolutely not. It's not for me. Learning the specifics about people going through residency and the struggles that they go through and the roadblocks that they go through. And it's nice to have an easy place to put your anger, but I think that's what's been really helpful is my own growth and realizing, oh, okay, it's a both and situation. And there are these structures and then this and this and this. And so trying to help people see that too. And so I love learning as well. And so if there is a cause that aligns with whatever my values are, and I'm not even talking about like a specific cause, but just really trying to advocate or try to contribute in some way, some small way through social media or also in person, you know, wild that some of us do things outside of social media, right? But trying to do that in some way, whether it's educating or talking to people or trying to advertise in some way. I have some Comic-Cons lined up and I'm trying to figure out how do I low key in the cosplay, try to advertise for either a law that I really don't want to get passed that I think is really unjust or resources for a lot of neurodivergent folks that might be at the Comic-Cons, things like that. So I think there's that too. Like it just sparks creativity.
Another one.
Another one. Yeah, the truth is I'm spicy every day, but I need a channel for that. And so the Thursday was an accident. It just happened by chance that a few Thursdays in a row a while ago, I saved a few posts because I didn't have anything else to post that day. And then it just stuck. And so it is kind of therapeutic because people will message me things. And so I'll like collect, like some people are meme collectors, which I just have the utmost respect. So I try to do that with all the spice. Thank you to Twitter/X because a lot of it is from there, not exclusively. Yeah, a lot of the spice, and it's like I can funnel it through this one day so it doesn't get out and destroy my entire life in the town and start like a nuclear war out here in the physical space.
So this is specifically, I'm asking her, did I come off creepy when I was DMing her? I mean, like, DM, I've been trying to get on the ladies. And I'm always terrified. All jokes aside, I'm always terrified that I'm going to come off too much, too aggressive. The social anxiety kicks in, the construct, right? Because I'm thinking that I'm coming off like the big brown dude that I am, which most folks are terrified. Specifically, white individuals, white women. And so when I'm doing these texts, I'm always a little scared, right? I always want to be professional, kind, empathetic, cool, but authentic. And so I ask these questions, making sure I'm staying legit. I'm making sure that my personality's in check when I'm sending messages. And it always is. I think it's just a really funny point, specifically as I'm trying to teach and use this as a tool for folks that are neurodivergent or autistic, or specifically just dudes sending messages. There's ways to be appropriate and also funny. And also we make jokes about femininity in here because a lot of people will think that I'm like a woman when I'm texting them because it's kind and nice and not creepy and sexualized. And that's like, oh, this might be a woman. That's a good one. So I'm bringing this up because you find a lot of these gender norms in there that I don't necessarily fit. And thus I must be a woman or gay, which is interesting. So that's why we're teasing her about this in this clip.
I thought it came off really friendly. And then I just want to know who, because now I'm like, oh, how did it come across when I asked like who referred me? But I really just wanted to know because I have like several people that I could refer to you all and I wanted to thank them. So no, I thought it came off really friendly, not robotic, not creepy, not weird.
She didn't say non-womanly. So just saying.
It did not come off femme, if that helps. I don't know.
I don't think this. We've been told this multiple times where they come on and they're like, oh shit, these are two guys, not women. Like, yeah, because you use a lot of emojis as well when you message.
This is triggering a science neuron on my undergrad. I did an honors project on assuming someone's gender based on the type of language that they use. But this was even though my age, this is pre a lot of emoji use or anything. But there is some research on that. So I'm just wondering, I don't know. I don't think I assume as much gender probably most of this. Probably because I unlearned that when I was going through it. But it would have to align maybe with a stereotype for me to assume one way or another. But also, no offense to whomever has said that to you, I'm gonna look at the page before I agree to be on a podcast. Maybe it's just because I'm a
Fair.
podcast host, but I kind of feel like I need to at least know the vibe and what I'm
Yeah.
stepping into. Like, are we gonna be a good fit? I'm just throwing that out there.
Also, we didn't have a lot of like face, like social media wise, we didn't really show our
Okay, that's
face a
fair.
lot too. Like we didn't have as much as how much we have now. Yeah, it's a lot more now, but oh my fucking god, you're an idiot. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, let's get into Gen V. All right, Gen V. It's a spin-off of The Boys on Amazon. Shout out to Amazon. Yeah, shout out to The Boys. And it's all about these different kids who have all these powers, and they go to the school that's specifically all about the powers. And then, after they get to have like these certain classes that they go to have these different careers for having these powers and all this. So it's very boxed in, robotic. Like you have to, if you're really good at this, and it's, even if you're not good at that, it's more about like how they look at you numbers wise when it comes from like how popular are you, how who's your family members, all this stuff that in the education system is already looked at through, and that's through everything really. It's just through life. Let's be honest. That's just life in general. You look at corporations, they're hiring people that they already know or are related to them, yeah, pigeonholed in just sports. What is it called now? It's something babies. Was it where it's like nepo babies. Nepo babies. Yeah. I know, and you just anytime you talk, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna let him talk, and then you're just like nipple. Jesus. Anyways, nepo babies, all this real life stuff that's happening right now, and I'm kind of glad that social media is kind of calling it out a little bit, and that see all these nepo babies kind of getting upset, being like, "I had nothing when I grew up, except for this mansion and oh, a family that loved me." Um, but anyways, that's what it's all about. And then we have these different characters that are going through all these different things. Just like we have Emma, who is going through all of the. It's she literally throws up to get smaller. That's like her superpower, and then she eats to get bigger. So it's like kind of that back and forth, right? So now we're looking at eating disorders for her. Then we also have Marie, who her like she can control blood in all these different ways, and the only way she can kind of do that at the moment is to cut herself, which once again, different way of self-harm in order to use these different powers. Um, and then we also have another character, I forgot their name, but they also they can change genders. They could change from a man or a woman. Then that's kind of relating to the trans issues there. But in this first scene, right, we have Emma who's talking to this girl, Justine, who's like the popular Justine. Even saying it, you're just like, ugh. It's like Venom, Justine. Um, and you have her, and she's been in a ton of movies and all this stuff, and Emma really is looking up to her as kind of like somebody to be like, hey, wow, if I'm cool with her, then I'm cool overall, and then I don't have to do all these small person scenes anymore because she does this social media as being tiny and gets millions of followers. But then she tells her about the purging, which she doesn't tell anybody about. Um, and you can kind of already sense just like the little manipulations in there, like when she was like, I don't want to tell you how I have my powers and stuff. She's like, okay, fine. Don't tell me then. Well, I guess I'll, just be over here. And, and then as soon as she tells her, then she kind of reassures her by saying like, hey, you know what? You can be anyone you want. You can be Maeve, the strongest character, like in the show. Um, and I just find it so interesting, right? Is that it's not only about deceit, like eating disorders, but then it's also about this kind of manipulation and how we're kind of forced to, especially with social media, we're forced to kind of have these things all out there when sometimes these are very private issues. So Dr. Mack, when we're talking about these issues and stuff like that, do you get have you gotten a lot of pullback when it comes to certain issues what a client wants to talk about? And how do you deal with that as a therapist or a psychologist?
And I'm gonna give the most stereotypical therapist answer. It
Ah,
depends on the client. It also depends on where we are in our relationship. I can't expect someone in systems that we're in, we feel really rushed to get all the history and then figure out treatment as soon as possible. And it's easy in that space to forget that this person's meeting with a new therapist. And no matter what type of therapy we do, at the end of the day, that relationship is of the utmost importance. Like trusting whoever, it could be a medical provider too, definitely a therapy provider. If I'm expecting to trust them with my most vulnerable things, I may not want, and especially if I've been harmed by providers in the past, I'm not going to likely want to share a lot of that. And also, for being honest, a lot of times when we go to therapy, therapists included, we have the decoy therapy issue. Like what we think the issue is that we're going to therapy, like consciously. And so a lot of the real underlying issues, they're not just hidden from the therapist, they're hidden from the client. Like we got to work to uncover those over time, depending on the type of therapy that you do. And so certainly I've gotten pushback from people for a variety of reasons. And so, especially at the beginning, I mean, I just let people know you don't have to answer anything yet. If it keeps coming up where there's a wall there, I think it's helpful for us to know at the very least why is the wall over here? And also importantly, like why is the wall like not over here? Because for someone else in front of me, it might be the reverse or something else. And so just kind of I feel like a building inspector. We're kind of looking around the wall. Like, what is it about the wall? What is it about the space? What is it like setting a essentially a bound, getting very right here, right now between us? What is that like? Telling someone who is in a position of power, despite my Spidey tattoo, they're still a position of power, and they're telling me no. And does that come up a lot in their life? Does it not? Like, is that so? Really, just being really curious. And so certainly that does happen a lot. So sometimes it's intentionally withholding information because for any number of reasons, again, the trust may not be there. Concealing that. Side note, my whole dissertation was on essentially more so racism in therapy. And so clients that don't feel comfortable with a white therapist, for example, the majority of us, if we're being honest, if they don't feel comfortable or invited in to talk about that issue, nothing to do with eating disorders, but anything culturally, there's literally a term for it. It's identity concealment, cultural concealment, where you don't feel safe to talk about that. So you're more likely to terminate therapy, etc. So a lot of different reasons it can come up. And so, especially at the beginning, I'm going to respect that. I'm also going to put like a sticky note in the back of my brain to just note, like, does that seem different from other questions that we're just getting to know it, like acquainted with whatever this wall is and this client, and later is there a way to approach, like get to know this from a curious stance and yeah, like what's the wall all about? Like what's if we're pulling back, if we're not wanting to talk about it, okay, we don't want to talk about that thing. I'm actually now less interested in that thing. I'm more interested in the why. Like what is it that is makes us uncomfortable to talk about?
Pretty sure this is one of the scenes of the clips where me or Spencer approach her with, how would you do with a client that's going through this specific issue where they were outed for their eating disorder online and social media? They were goaded, they were manipulated, they were betrayed. And so we talk about what would be the symptoms or signs of someone being betrayed like this, but then also what would be the fallout? And how would you sit with that individual that just went through that traumatic experience? From some shit ass friend like some Gen V that's just trying to get clout by capitalizing on people's trauma by posting it on social media. So that's what this clip is talking about.
This scene, I know it's revolving more around social media, so I could see that plausibly happening. I think even Justina is the mean girl. And when I'm thinking back to when I grew up, I was a 90s baby. I was born in 1990. And so that type of what's called relational aggression in the research, where it is that I'm going to not hit you in the face. What I'm going to do is spread rumors about you, character assassination, or get you in some other way. And so there are probably a lot of high schools. I think that happened in mine too, where it wasn't social media involved. That takes it to a whole new level, and that does happen. There's still this, wow, I trusted you. And now everyone knows the secret about me that I clearly didn't want disclosed. And there's a lot of stigma surrounding it. Also for her, I mean, there's already the shame and everything. And also, let's be honest, in a lot of comics, I mean, I think Gen V and the Boys does a better job of this than some of the other universes where, if this were real life, some powers would be favored over others. Let's be honest. Some are
Sure.
seen as like cooler or whatever. And so there are all these layers wrapped up. And so if she was sitting in my office, I mean, we're just going to make space for that. And I'm not going to swoop in and do some, let's try to challenge these thoughts right now. That may not be what she needs at this moment. It sounds like more than anything, I'm noting there's been a huge rupture in trust with someone that she admired and looked up to. And this person also, this wasn't I accidentally told one person and then that I told them not to tell someone and then no. This was so clearly orchestrated. I hate Justine. We don't like Justine. Justine is the epitome of Regina George mean girl bullshit. And so yeah, someone in my office, you got to make space for that before we can even get anywhere. There's been this rupture. She finally feels vulnerable to tell someone, and it's also like coerced out of her. Like we have to acknowledge that. That was totally manipulated out of her as well. And now it's all out, and it goes alongside all these other things happening around the same time that are just super, super activating. We need more social psychology classes, I think, because there is actually something in social psychology and I guess evolutionary psychology, truth default theory, where we assume that the other person is telling us the truth because we have to. We're social creatures, just the way that we've evolved over time. And also, we can't just reproduce within our own bodies without like we are social creatures. We we
Come
need
on.
you're
Ah.
we need other people. So yeah, you're right. Then it's the ultimate nuance. Like, were there things that I was blinded to that I could have picked up on, or were there not? I mean, how many times true crime area? Oh, this person would have never done X, Y, Z. You're assuming that they're telling you the truth. And again, to your point, that doesn't mean we swing to the opposite way. We don't trust anyone. But I think both the boys and Gen V do a really good job of demonstrating that insidious kind of manipulation and exploitation that happens. It's really tricky to tease apart.
Yeah. And also kind of just before we get to there, I mean, you worked in corrections, and just being like having someone in isolation for too long,
Oh
it
yeah.
fucks up your head. It really does. It fucks you up. So it's like, we also need to relate that back into just everyday life as well. It's like if we isolate ourselves too much, that's going to get to us in some way. And that's why we need to be social. So, yeah. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Being inside in your own head for too long really get to you. Yeah. Anybody.
Yeah, they've done research on it. Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And there's a loneliness epidemic right now because it legitimately has effects on our physical health.
Mm. All right. Well, let's get into this next scene with Emma and Marie. So in this scene, Marie comes back to see Emma. She's like at her smallest, so that means she was purging like extra. Um, because I'm not sure if it was that because of like her mom. It was because of her mom. Yeah. All of it kind of mixing into one. And so now we're actually seeing that, yeah, it's not just her using her powers, it's actually something that she uses to cope with all these different things going on in her life as well. And and then so they're kind of having this honest talk with one another, and how they use their powers each, how um, Marie's kind of telling him, like, no, this is like an actual problem. Like, you need to, get some help for this. And then, Emma kind of comes back with, well, you cut yourself, so, you know, you do it. And there is truth to that she also uses it to cope as well, self-harming. And we've seen that because, yeah, same episode. And we've seen it throughout the whole season, really. Like anytime she gets in thinking about her family and what she's did to them, she killed her family accidentally. After that, anytime she thinks about it, she kind of cuts herself and uses her powers and kind of uses that as like a little bit of an excuse to be like, hey, yeah, I'm using my powers, cut. And you're like, "Oh, okay, all right." Um, but yeah, I think this is, well, I actually just want to get to this. Why did we pick the scene? Huh? Why did we do it? Why, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Dr. Mac.
This one really demonstrates, I mean, number one, how helpful it is, obviously, to have social support. Also, she made a good point about Marie, if we're being honest. But most importantly, is the concealment that happens, the shame surrounding that happens. There's a difference between, it could be anorexia, it could be bulimia, it could be binge eating disorder. And just as a side note for people, those overlap a lot more than people realize. These are not really as distinct categories as we really think, because you can be purging and have anorexia. Actually, the most common is atypical anorexia. I hate that title as a side note, but that just means you aren't extremely thin by the standards required for diagnosis. There's a difference in these versus, let's say, orthorexia, which isn't actually like a set diagnosis, but it's the clean eating. It's more related to the distress. If I go out to a restaurant, I bring my pre-made meals with me. I experience a lot of distress if I order a steak and there's butter on it or something like that. There are communities it's more socially acceptable to engage in that type of behavior, even socially. With this type of behavior in Gen Z, I mean, it's what we think of a lot of times with eating disorders, and it's inherently complicated for her because it is related to her powers. And so her trying to downplay it to Marie is a huge piece here, trying to minimize it, also deflecting a little bit, saw that move, putting it back on Marie, but really trying to protect herself in that sense. Because really then the question is, what is she defending against if she's getting defensive? And it's because deep down she knows how serious that was. And it really does demonstrate, I mean, in a much more physical, I guess, like in a different way. Probably a lot of people don't realize this, but outside of substance use disorders, eating disorders like in the mental health arena have the highest mortality rates, like outside of substance use and overdoses. So it was a very literal way of describing the dangers if she were to keep doing that. It does a good job, I think, of capturing that can be the case in real life too, especially because you have to eat to survive. So inherently, there's these complicating factors there.
So this is when your boy Dr. Nas asks the good question, because we're talking about, or real talk, we're talking about perfectionism and how Gen V, this is played out throughout the college experience, but also her specifically being a woman and wanting to be thin and get these roles and have to go over the rankings of a superhero, then have to compete for like love interest in real life, and then just overall body expectations. And she's also a muscular, more stronger woman too. So she's not the petite woman that, society thinks that she needs to be. And then we get into, how they're all taking these chemicals. Their parents are pushing them to be these all-stars, these superheroes. They're capitalizing on them, giving them the drugs, these performance enhancers to make money off of their backs. And this, how is that not pressure? Your whole objective and reason for being born is technically so your parents can capitalize on you and make money off of you, profit from you. Because it wasn't just about changing the world while they were given these drugs. It was to become superheroes and have a chance at this lottery, joining the 7. The 7 most racist, scandalous, rotten motherfuckers on earth. Oh, you might not understand that unless you've seen actually the show The Boys, because obviously that'll explain that they're all horrible. All right, let's get into the clip. Let's hear what the Dr. Matt got to say.
For sure, especially when I did work with college STEM students. I think I was working more with undergrads and in STEM or vet students or things like that, where high amount of achievement. They're just oriented toward achievement. That could be partly their personality, that could be the dynamics they grew up in, and yeah, that perfectionism. And specifically, if we're looking at anorexia, there tends to be a lot of that perfectionism from parents kind of passed on, either explicitly said or modeled to them. And I mean, in my mind, it's also grandiosity, especially when we're thinking about Gen V. It's you gave your baby who can't like really legally consent as like an infant, and you give your baby this compound V, not really knowing what's going to fully happen. And so then I want my baby to be special. I mean, it's peak helicopter parent almost of I want my baby to be special, or the child actor kind of parents, the performance parents that are highly focused on the prestige, or they want their kid to be special. And apparently these kids were not going to be special anyway, so they give them compound V. And then what if the powers don't turn out exactly the way that the parents wanted, which I think shows up very clearly in the scene when the mom says, you got to work with what you got. And very much like you pointed out, mom very much views her as kind of this fragile being that she needs to swoop in and rescue. She can't trust her judgment. Like mom cannot trust her judgment. She needs to swoop in. She knows what's best for her. So she's going to come in and measure her height, and then they're at the ball and going through that, and yeah, trying to place her in this box and also obviously heavily exploit her. And the theme through all of this is she's not listening to her daughter at all. Not listening to her daughter, not listening really to what she needs at all. She's placing, again, like just thinking about what she thinks her daughter needs. But I'm not hearing her actually hearing her daughter and what her daughter needs to actually feel better. Let's say, okay, you are worried about your daughter's size or weight or whatever, her health. What are you doing? All you offered to do was get measurements on her, and then what were you going to do? What, like, if you were that concerned, what were you going to do? So instead, what you do, even though you're concerned, which seems counterintuitive, is you're going to get her signed up for a reality show, even though we're concerned. We're sometimes concerned, other times apparently there are limits to that. She like pivots between like over controlled authoritarian helicopter parent and then momager. And then with that one comment where she was talking about Justine, it felt a little more like a friend and not a parent. And so if I'm Emma navigating this, where do I put you in my life?
They all are because they want to have. I mean, and you can kind of see it in just real life. It's like how we get athletes and stuff like that. Athlete kids, we do this all the time. Like when they're young and stuff, we put them into all these different leagues and stuff. We make them go on to play like every day, practice every day. Don't really focus on anything else besides sports or just sports in school. And then I mean, and then all of a sudden you say like, "Oh, wow, these kids have trauma and they don't really have any social lives and they're kinda a little fucked up in the head." And you're like, "Yeah, because they didn't know anything else. They didn't know anything else other than what you just showed them. That was it. No other life experiences besides sports, school, or anything else that you're kinda forcing them to do, you know?" So, and well, in order for them to live through what they didn't get to do as, as kids. They didn't get the popularity, they didn't get, to sign these huge contracts in order to play sports or whatever. And so, and they think like that's the most important thing, even though they say like, "Oh yeah, I wanna make my kid happy." But it's like, to what end? Like, happy monetarily or just happy in life? Like, which one is it?
because you essentially stuck like a bunch of stage parents kids in. That's what I like about this show too. Like Gen V versus the boys is the boys obviously they're grown up, they're whatever. You're not seeing how they're developed. So essentially you're sticking kids who probably were really isolated before because again, we got stage parents. It reminds me of all these documentaries coming out about childhood actors and whatever. You're feeling really isolated because the priority is supposed to be whatever the talent, I guess, is, and you're sticking them all in the school together. And that's what I really liked about that last scene with Marie. And then throughout the rest of the season is it's like the friendship is really important. If they do go that route, a lot of shows will just prioritize romantic relationships. And that does come up here. But I think it really shows, oh, we're not just here for ourselves and for our own. I think that was probably more Marie's journey than some others, but the power of friendship, the importance of that. And now we're going to actually work on this goal together as a team, as people that care about each other and not just now I'm isolated and kind of unintentionally a little self-absorbed.
I'm not fully sure what started this conversation, but we do a little pivot here where we talk about parents' backgrounds and how many of them are cool with certain things, progressive things, individualistic things, certain things with their children, but not with others. So they may say that they are this individual, but then, of course, my kid's not gay. You know, they may say that they're cool with all this and say and affirm a bunch of things, but then, of course, you're a piece of shit if you bring home some bad grades. And then we pivot, and of course, we're talking about the trans identities later in this clip. And I think I talk about like not always the folk, your loved ones are always going to support everything that you do. And not saying that they should. There should be some questioning, some probing. But sometimes there's some hidden bigotry in some of these things, or there's some hidden messages that are being said from the parents, from the loved ones, from the caregivers, from the mentors that lead to a lot of the pressure, that lead to a lot of the angst, that lead to a lot of the isolation, that lead to a lot of the suicidality. So we're going to talk about some of that in this clip. Yeah, let's check it out. She nails it magnificently.
Yeah, well, certainly it depends on probably where they grew up. I think also the generation they grew up in and their own parental dynamics, but certainly it was a really creative way to show that. And even when the dad says, I mean, I'm not a bigot, but if anyone starts a sentence with, I'm not blah, I'm about to be the most whatever thing you've ever heard in your life with that.
I'm not gay,
Well,
but what?
you choose this, and I think you're doing it to spite me because it's really about me as the stage parent. Like it's really all back to me. Like this is just somehow to spite me. Certainly, there's a lot of that. Even parents that are seemingly progressive, that comes in where there's some cognitive dissonance that comes in. I've seen even with friends, but also with clients. Certainly a lot of more religious or more socially conservative parents, but also even progressive ones, which those kids, now adults or whatever, they're thrown for a loop because they're thinking, wait a minute, this is the equivalent of, ooh, not my backyard though. I'm okay if other people do that. I'm not okay if and I'm sure you see that more than I do, especially working with college students. In theory, I'm okay with it. Somewhere else.
But in real life?
So again, this is actually talking about specifically the trans clip in here and how the individual is able to switch from male to female in the movie, and talking about how the father just always wanted the perfect boy. And then when they switch into the woman, the identity, and that's terrible. That's bad. And so we're talking about hey, I'm still the same kid that you've always loved. I'm still the same person you've always loved. So that's what we're trying to get to in this clip. And they're talking about how some of the parents are like, gross, no, this is not it. Or, they can't see the person that's in front of them. They only see that this label or maybe the pronoun that they want to go by. And for some of the parents, it hurts. It's like they lost their child, right? That name is now dead. And so we're talking about the parents and how loss and grief are there. We get that. We actually talk about that and work with that on some parents that are willing to accept it and consult with me, the therapist, when working with their child, if their child consents to them talking to me. So that's kind of where we're going at with that. There's a lot of the pain from all parties and how it leads into sometimes a very toxic relationship, which only leads to more pain. And so you see the father in that clip being horrific, and then all you do is push the child more away. So now you have no child at all. So not only you're grieving them and what you thought their life was going to be when they were cisgendered, but also we talk about when my clients are diagnosed with like autism, and like, will my child be happy? Will my child ever live a normal life? I'm like, they're happy now, they're normal life now. And so we're talking about these things when it relates to parents and how fucked up it can be. And then again, I do empathize with some parents on some of these aspects. Makes sense to have your world or job or the view of something, or like you get an injury, you get a diagnosis of like cancer, something like that. It's altering. It's mind altering. You end up getting kicked out of school, right? But someone dies, it's altering. And so it does take time for some people to ingest this. It's not just going to be, oh, okay. That's not how it works. Some folks may dislike that, my opinion. This is obviously not Dr. Max or Spencer's opinion, but it takes time for some people. And I think that that's okay. I think that this is okay. I think we can meet and talk and discuss when we don't hate each other immediately. Harder for parents because they're most likely older. And so there's a lot of things that they're not privy to or ignorant to. Hopefully, as it moves on throughout the generations, things get more and more affirming and accepting. Okay, let's get back to the scenes.
And I think especially too, the boy and being a trans girl, trans woman, like the gender things there. I think for a lot of parents, there might be grief regardless of this picture that you had. You're picturing the wedding or whatever that life was going to be. But especially if there's something about that piece that I have seen with clients. And Dr. Naz, I'd love to hear from you too. But the fact that it's a boy that was expected to happen. Or I think even if they are accepting to varying degrees, it's, oh, well, I had this picture of what I thought would happen. I think it just, for some parents, of course, that's maybe not as much of an issue. And for some, they're very accepting and it's just on their own. They just unlearn that, what they were expecting. But a lot of it I've heard from clients or even clients maybe that I've had myself that are parents, it's, yeah, especially if I expected to walk them down the aisle or I expected, these certain details or expectations that I had had for them. My dad is autistic and has ADHD. I have ADHD. He's a bird biologist. Yes. Yes, very much there. Which is why my brain wanted to go on a side quest about Emma's comment about, I was fighting off ants all night. The ants would win. I'm sorry. Just as a side note, they would absolutely win. If those are her only powers, they would win. But anyway, I have had clients recently that I'm doing testing on, and yeah, like they might have both, or it seems like, especially for girls or women, they were misdiagnosed with ADHD. And I'm like, are we sure? Okay. I don't think so.
Can we just have appreciation of how fucking crazy Dr. Mac is? You're going to see some really funny stuff coming up in the next scene when we're talking about gender reveals and how big of a deal this is, right? And putting in people in the box and all this different stuff. It's going to be fucking hilarious. Oh my God, I'm so sad that all you don't get to hear all the bickering and back and forth and the stuff that I interjected and a lot of the funny stuff that Spence ended up saying getting cut out because it wouldn't make sense contextually because my voice wasn't there. You should know that good majority of this podcast, we were fucking cracking up. Here comes your sex reveal / gender reveal. Genital reveal, yes.
We got a weird thing about genitals in this country. Like even starting with the gender reveals that are really just genital reveals. If we can't call it a sex reveal because that sounds weird, but it's just the genitals. And we haven't even seen the genitals yet. We don't even, it's a little weird. It's
Not
a little
yet.
weird that the skin sac is the thing that we're putting everyone in the box in. Like, what about their like personality or whatever? And then you name your kid Brinlin with like 6 Y's or whatever, 4 N's, and then yeah,
That's a name.
yeah. I'm from the Southeast. Okay, it happened.
All right, fair enough.
No, I did. We're talking about the trans because that is part of it. Of like, I expected to walk you down. I expected you to have a certain partner. I expected you to do this. I expected you to get pregnant or have kids. I expect whatever. It kind of comes back down to that, which is it's a little odd if we're being honest. It's a little odd. And that's a lot coming from the fact that we're talking about the show Gen Z. A lot of odd. weird things happen in that show.
He's got a dick. He's got a dick. Yeah.
Again, I just apologize because this conversation that we have with Dr. Mac was just magnificent. And there's so many good questions and pivots and sidebars. But in this clip here, we're trying to talk about the young boy, I think his name is Sam, and how they experimented on him and how they find like the solution to kill all the other superhumans is within like his blood. And that's how they're going to like figure out some things and like get rid of people is by experimenting on him. And we see him go through this psychosis. And this is where we have a lot of jokes and laughs, which it looks like it got cut out about all the puppets. Or maybe we'll see it in the next clip. And these delusions are common. These delusions are normal for folks that are overwhelmed, that are stressed out, that have anxiety, OCD, or that are autistic. And so sometimes psychiatric breaks do happen. Maybe dissociations do happen. Maybe hallucinations do happen. Doesn't always mean that they need to be hospitalized. Doesn't always mean it's like severe and mentally ill. It could be us just dissociating, going to a more peaceful, calming place. So we're referring to like two scenes in this one. Specifically, we're starting to pivot more into the young boy being experimented on and how horrific that is, but then also how he gets a healing because then he gets a magnificent girlfriend who ends up being the young woman that has the eating disorder in the show. So we're getting to that and we're building to that about community, love, and how he starts to heal and he starts to regulate his emotions better because he's finding people that are affirming and that are accepting, that are kind, that also aren't hurting him and betraying him. Which is pretty intense because the young boy just lost his brother earlier, and his brother was like his main source of support and was advocating for him, and now he's gone. So the fact that he's able to regulate is quite magnificent. But the puppet scene, trigger warning, it's nothing but pure murder, just puppets, which is actually quite fucking funny. So check it out.
Okay, so we're talking about this plotline that really starts where essentially this virus thing. I feel like this shows up in every kind of mutant comic ever. There's some kind of storyline about we got to cure it, we're freaking out, there's discrimination, there's all of this. And here it's, well, first there's Gen V compound being given to infants without, I mean, there's no talk about there can't be informed consent. But then they're essentially revealing that they've been experimenting on people that have gotten Gen V to try to cure it and essentially try to not just inject them, but actually create it into this virus, essentially. And it's a doctor that's engaged in this. And the language that sticks out to me is when he's talking about Marie, he uses the word subject, not participant, which I think is, even though that probably sounds like a small difference, it isn't. There's a reason that we use the word participant when we're talking about research studies, because that person has to go through informed consent. If they're a subject, I mean, it is what it sounds like, that feeling that comes up when you hear that word, that they're a subject, that something is happening to them. They're kind of this passive presence. And I can't ignore, because a lot of my research expertise is in this area. This would not be the first time this has happened in a comic, but also in real life, that we've done a lot of harm here, and that there is a physician or doctor of some sort who's taken an oath, who has some kind of ethics code, who's willingly choosing not to follow that, and is actively harming people, and also not giving people the help that they need. And then if we go to the puppet situation, we have Sam, who is essentially like has these like wild powers, and we're having some psychotic moments here. It really did add some levity. I pivoted. I know I went on like a side quest here, but essentially this like puppet, I know, this puppet ADHD, this puppet scene really ties in because we're looking at essentially psychosis. He's been isolated. That's going to add anything. So whether or not you already have any psychosis, which there's debate about what we even mean by psychosis, even amongst clinicians, researchers, it could be delusions, hallucinations, both, one or the other. It's really vague, but that's a theme that comes up for him. And so when he's going through this puppet thing, I mean, there's some comedic relief. It was very creative. It really actually kind of pivoted from the gore. It removes us a little bit emotionally from the harm that is actually caused, which was kind of a nice break from the themes really that we see for the boys and Gen B, really. I mean, the first scene in the boys, like, let's be real, we were set up right from the get-go that there is intense gore, and so it adds some separation. The hallucinations, I mean, it's really any kind of perceptual, any kind of senses that you're experiencing that other people don't experience if we're looking at it hallucinations wise. So that would be unusual to see puppets. Now that said, that doesn't that couldn't couldn't happen. I'd be more worried about a medical kind of issue happening in that sense. Like, do we got a brain tumor? We got seizures, we got whatever. But there's a lot of stigma associated with that. And I think the fact that he was not getting the help that he needed for that. Instead, he's just being experimented on, which is and isolated, which is either going to cause some of that or make it worse. There's no treatment for that. And I just want people to know that all kinds of people experience psychosis, even briefly. I have narcolepsy, so I do have hallucinations at night, especially before I got diagnosed. If you have a migraine and you experience an aura, that's not necessarily a hallucination, but it is like a difference in senses. Like maybe you see something, you get like some kind of sensory input. Any of that can happen, but it just goes to show again, like he's not getting the help that he needs. He's being exploited. He's being treated more like you are in corrections or in this punitive kind of manner. And it was some needed comedic relief, I think, to kind of go through and like, yeah, add some levity because clearly he's really struggling and it's hard for him to be able to tease that apart, especially during distress. And it's really frustrating because he could get better help for that. There are better medications now. Also, we know that even with like schizophrenia or something like that, social support is a huge thing that can be beneficial for that help, like family support, social support. He wasn't given that. Medications that we have now. So, psychosis piece I think is important because, yeah, that isolation was there. And I think it relates to stigma. This person's crazy. We throw them out. We throw them in like an infirmary or like a hospital somewhere, and they're going to go through God knows what there historically and currently. There are a lot of hospitals, and sometimes that's necessary. But there was treatment. Not only was he experimented on, but also treatment was being withheld from him that he needed. And I think this scene was a great way to show his clearly the guy's a genius and has these amazing powers, and then there's this like contrast with how much he is legitimately struggling. And it was a wild scene. Yeah, that was the other reason I'm glad you actually brought it up, is to really just dispel like that trope that tends to happen, that someone that has hallucinations or delusions or whatever the case may be, that they're going to harm other people or they're going to go murder other people or whatever the case is. So I think it's helpful because I mean, one, needed the comedic relief, but also, yeah, does it actually represent psychosis and to how much and how did we get there? And yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's still funny. It was a wild scene. Well, and you're working with that age group where it can, yeah. Corrections, that was wild. There was a lot, especially when you get bath salts involved or spice or stronger cannabis now, uh, dementia, like all kinds of stuff.
Yep. So, before we go, Dr. Mac, do you want to give us some plugs on anything that you're working on or what you're doing? Anything?
I don't know what I'm doing. No, I am still trucking along on my Instagram because I'm an elder millennial and TikTok is very overwhelming to my senses. So you can find me at Revealing the Ivory Tower podcast. Do post a lot of spicy things on there, but try to do some education. The podcast has been on a hiatus for a while, but I'm actively working on editing that, taking to use your word, Dr. Nas, pivot to usually it's more educational, science related content, but we're going to talk about the wild journey that my PhD program was. And I also am on a wait list with therapy clients right now, but I do offer consulting. So if there are other people that want training on things, you can reach me out to me on my Instagram, Revealing the Ivory Tower podcast, or you can email me at McKenna, McKenna, at revealpsychology.com.
Well, thank you, Dr. Matt, for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it. It was fun. It was actually a really fun podcast. And yeah, usually the longer ones mean they're fun. So other ones were just like, let's wrap it up. So thank you once again. I'm Spencer. That's Nas, Different Spectrum Podcast.
Again, everyone, much apologies. Right, this is the Different Spectrums podcast, as Spencer always says. Much appreciation, much love. Thank you for supporting us. Please go check out Dr. Mac. They are magnificent. They were actually one of the most realist, funnest folks, right, we've had on the podcast. I guess their weird fits our weird, right? Same vibe. So if you enjoy us, you will quite much enjoy them. And they just better and funnier than us and a lot of shit. So go check them out. All right, everyone. Remember, take care of yourselves. And if you don't, that's completely up to you. Maybe that's okay, but maybe you should take care of yourself. All right. Peace.